one of the key things, if you're considering a relationship with an INFJ, or in a relationship with an INFJ and encountering difficulties, one key thing that might help bring a bit of smoothness or a bit of fluidity to the relationship. And that key thing is communication, which I think even beyond an INFJ and whatever relationship, whatever MBTI type, is kind of key, like to communicate with your partner, to communicate your needs, to be heard and to be receptive of also someone sharing their emotions with you. And an INFJ, we're kind of like that onion sort of thing. It's like, just when you think you get to know us, there's another layer, or there's another layer of complexity, where it's kind of like that song by Gang of Youths, that the deepest sighs, the frankest the shadows, where it's not everything means something, honey, that line sort of thing. Because sometimes when we are exploring an idea, you might be going, well, this person, they're thinking all these dark thoughts, or they're thinking all this sort of thing, and it's like, we're just exploring an idea. It's kind of like a puzzle for us. It's like you might just come along and catch us at one moment of this puzzle and go, well, that's that person sort of thing. We tend to take time to explore things, ideas, concepts, people, social situations. We love to go a bit deeper in that. So sometimes through communication, you can start to understand a bit of what goes on in that internal world, that introverted world, that introverted intuition world, that feeling, because it is quite a fascinating world. It's like, I mean, I can keep myself quite easily entertained for about over a year now, being by myself, and like, it does get lonely because I do have that extroverted feeling. I do want to be around people sometimes. I do find people frustrating sometimes, but it is a fascinating world. It's quite an imaginative world, and a very creative world, and a very perceptive world. But being open to communicating, and if communication, or if assumptions, definitely assumptions, I find similar to like, not everything means something, honey sort of thing. That assumption of what we might be thinking, I think that is the danger when you're dealing with an INFJ in a relationship, or just even in a friendship. That assumption of what we might be thinking, or that projection of what we might be thinking, because you're probably going to be wrong, or you might be right to probably about 5% of what we're actually exploring, because what we're actually exploring, we might not fully understand ourselves because we're still exploring it, or that assumption could be terribly wrong, and that terribleness of that assumption will actually not bode well on the emotional state of that, which will then switch our little introverted intuition brain onto you sort of thing, and start trying to figure you out sort of thing. So if there is a breakdown in communication, the introverted intuition will start to fill those gaps of what is going on here, and it's doing it from wanting to help or trying to solve. But I guess if there's a continued breakdown or a continued assumptions about what someone is thinking or feeling, that keeps hitting the mark of being incorrect or just shutting the other person down. Once again, it's like communication. It's a co-communication sort of thing. It's a back and forth, but if it's only one way, that's where you might find your INFJ start to go a bit quiet. And that quietness, we're not switched off. We're highly switched on in that stage. And it's normally sort of early warning signs of, if you're in a relationship, or if you're in a friendship or considering, or just even in a work environment, that it's leading towards the INFJ exiting out the door, so to speak. Because, as I've said in the INFJ door slam, if we're repeatedly just abused or repeatedly used, we will tend to take that scenario put a very realistic value system on it and go, being devalued here, I'm off, and that can just be simple down to a breakdown in communication. Now, on the INFJ side, it's very hard for us to communicate. It's very long-winded for us to communicate, and sometimes we don't know what we feel. We can be quite good at picking up on other people's feelings, scarily so sometimes, but sometimes not so good at our own selves. Like, there are blind spots that we have. I mean, everyone has blind spots, but we can be quite, that level of depth perception onto others can sometimes I'm thinking, oh, I must have some sort of trauma going on, my body's feeling this way, and then it's like, then I have something to eat and it's like, oh crap, I was just hungry. Or like tiredness sort of thing. It's like, why am I so grouchy? And it's like, oh, probably should go to sleep, because we're deep in thought about something else sort of thing. It's like we tend to forget our own needs sometimes. So similar with communication, it's checking in nicely with us to see how we're feeling, how we're going. And because we've got a very strong extroverted feeling function as well, we tend to know if you're checking in authentically or not authentically sort of thing, whether it's merely lip service or you genuinely care sort of thing. With that communication is both verbal and non-verbal, because for an INFJ, it's more the non-verbal that helps us with the introverted intuition. It's what you're not saying, or the body language that we'll pick up on, and it's not 100% correct all the time. Like, for me, it's like, it's very hard to know if someone's showing me interest, for example, because a lot of people open up to me, so it's kind of normal for me to be in that intimate sort of like people's intimate background, not on a relationship, but their intimate sort of like feelings sort of thing. Because I could be just sitting in a laundromat, someone looks at me and it's like, therapy's in session apparently. I don't know what people see, but like I start to know about their background, their family history. There's a lot of people I know about their medical strangers basically. So it's very hard for me to know sometimes like if someone's genuinely interested within myself, or if the just therapy's in session for whatever reason. We can be quite good at perceiving others, but not very good at perceiving ourselves. So for the INFJs, getting more in touch with our own feelings to be able to communicate, especially because we can be very people-pleasing or very wanting to help others by not helping ourselves first type of people, is once again with that FE and red flags thing chat that I did, is sometimes being somewhat, I guess, selfish in the sense of taking care of our own self, or knowing how we're feeling to be able to express that, because sometimes we don't want to rock the boat, but if we're not rocking the boat, the other person doesn't know that they're in choppy waters sort of thing. So it does fall upon the INFJ as well to communicate their needs, and it also takes someone to be able to listen to a very long, like these chats sort of thing, and be able to be receptive of that. I guess patience to be able to hold space for the INFJ. It's going to be sometimes a blender of things to actually communicate what we want. So, but as long as there's open communication and that's the other thing, the INFJ will probably touch upon topics that you might find taboo or uncomfortable. But once again, that's kind of the world we exist in sort of thing. We'll go deep into those things as a way to understand it, not to empathize and like go into and like, I want to be the dark person now, but to see it from a different perspective as a way to help. You can just label someone as evil, but how did they get to be evil, sort of thing? Was it the situation or environments or all these sorts of things that would lead into it? As you can see, this is what we're to explore. So yeah, and probably an INFJ would love someone that loves to go on these long-winded chats, loves to go into those depths, and not everyone will want to go into depths. Like some people, where it's a sensing type, might find this highly tiring to listen to, or highly tiring to actually explore these depths. Like they'll need their basically timeouts every now and again to come up for the air. And it's also on the INFJ to go, okay, I'm probably being a bit too much of myself in this moment. This person needs a break, because we will chat your ear off. Because we do have that extrovertedness like within ourselves. Like we will be out there we love people, even though once again people piss us off sometimes. I think if you are considering a relationship with an INFJ or are in a relationship and noticing things are a bit quiet or things are a bit staggered, or they seem a bit frustrated when they're talking and it's like they're getting cut off, and it's like or they're just not being heard, or if they're a part of the furniture, then if they suddenly go missing sort of thing, and you don't know the reason, maybe that's the reason, communication breakdown, and they just weren't being heard or seen, which beyond an INFJ we all want to be heard and seen. That might be the reason. And it's like, to them it's like, why invest the energy if like I get nothing in return? Everything is energy, which actually wasn't said by Albert Einstein. Go look it up. But yeah, so and these pauses, being patient in these pauses. If we suddenly go quiet, we're not pissed off, or we're not like giving the silent treatment in that time. We're accessing the introverted intuition in that time, where in this time my brain actually goes basically still, and basically nothing happens, but something comes out of it. So it's kind of like a settling. So if we suddenly go quiet in a conversation and you're like, oh, are you okay, sort of thing, it actually breaks us out of it, sort of thing, and you'll probably just get some sort of staggered reply, or maybe an annoyed reply. Our method of communication, long-winded, we'll take pauses, we'll stare at you very intently, probably a bit more intimate than probably what you're used to, because we're deeply interested, and we want to be able to help and communicate this to you. And if they are a bit quiet around you, they're either shy in figuring you out, or they're also figuring you out and like whether it's worth talking, like they might have heard enough and think, is it worth my investment here, sort of thing, of my time, if I start talking and it's going to get like a negative response. So sometimes like quietness is a weighing up, be it, do I stay in this relationship, am I thinking of I'm sorry to say it's not going to be easy. So if you're considering signing that contract, give it some thought. And the other thing, beside the communication thing, if you're looking at definitely the INFJ as like you see, oh, it's the counselor of the MBTI, or they're very good at helping people on that, and you're wanting to enter into that, hoping for therapy and that, I'd also caution against that, or maybe seek therapy, because we're going to like to do it, but whether we're actually, like, I'm not qualified as a psychologist and that, so we're going to be wanting to help, but it's also it's going to be taxing if the person actually has to use their functions 24 hours a day, sort of thing. It's like that energy will die out, sort of thing, and you might get a cranky INFJ when you could have a loving INFJ if you take care of your own needs as well, sort of thing. And same for the INFJ in that situation. If we're giving too much advice and getting a high off that sort of thing, then rein that back in, because you'll run out of energy sooner or later. So yeah, so I'm Dion from Eflowtion Support Services, and thank you for listening to this chat. Bye for now.